This is Talkin to America. I'm your host, Aaron Zellman. Our guest today is Ryan Horsley of Red's Trading Post in Twin Falls, Idaho. Ryan has been a victim of BATFE abuse, and we're going to talk about his story and some of the fascinating aspects of it. Ryan, welcome to Talkin to America.
Thank you, Aaron.
Ryan, why don't we start with you just giving us a brief history of the family business?
Well, Red's Trading Post was actually started back in 1936 by my great-grandfather. We're actually Idaho's oldest gun shop. We've been here for quite a number of years, and we've always had an honorable, upstanding business. Well,
then why would the ATF, or the BATFE, or some people call it the Bureau of Arbitrary Technical Findings and Edicts, why would they harass you?
When they came in 2000, they did an audit in 2000, and that's when I just took over as manager of our family store. They found violations, and I mean these were, minor violations such as writing wire in instead of yes or no, and their response to that was it could, on some of these questions is wire in could be misconstrued as something else. And we had another agent come back in 2005 to do another audit. We've had other audits since, and at that time he had told us we were one of the best small gun shops he'd ever inspected, so I wasn't too concerned. And he started writing us up on violations, and I mean some of these violations, when you took a look at them, wrote us up on a poster and a pamphlet. These posters and pamphlets, these were each separate violations, one for the poster, one for the pamphlet, both stating that handguns are dangerous around children. He also tried to write us up on gun locks, not having any free gun locks available. However, most new firearms are supplied with gun locks, and finally I was able to find one gun lock that was down there and he made sure that did not have a price because it has to be a free gun lock. The other issue that they brought us up on was the biggest violation they got us on was county, not having the county down. And, and I had asked him at that time, what about some of these areas in the country that don't even have a county? He didn't want to address that, and as we read it and as we're defending it as well, is that it's county and or city. But they wrote us up on 320 violations of not having the county, although it had the city. All in all, we had a 99.6% success rate. They went back 5 years. We averaged about 2,000 firearm sales per year, so he went back through about 10,000 forms. And, keep in mind on some of these violations, these are not laws, they're not ordinances. What these are policies. The ATF comes up with these policies, and what's interesting is when we were written up in 2005, these were none of the violations that were written up in previous audits. And so that's what was interesting is that, in walking through in this 2005 audit, I questioned this agent several times saying, we've never been told of this or this issue or this issue. It's never been brought up. And he told me at that time different agents look for have different items that they look for. So it's all up to interpretation right there.
Let's see, you got 10,000 forms to go through, and there's about 40 hand-entered spaces, if I remember, on a 4473. So it's 400,000 entries all done by hand.
Yes.
And you had a 99.6% rate that was accurate?
That is correct.
All right. So that's why they want to revoke your license, because there's someone didn't put an N in where there should have been a no and things like that.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, it's too bad they can't be held to the same standards, or Congress. So you go through this craziness where they want to revoke your license, and you have to go through an appeals process. So what was that like?
The appeal process was ridiculous. I was excited about the appeal process because, at the same time, I didn't even think that they would revoke our license over petty paperwork violations and missing poster and pamphlets, and I was absolutely shocked that they would attempt to revoke our license. So I was excited to go through the appeal process. And then our attorney warned me. He said, "Ryan, don't get excited." He's actually an attorney who has been legal counsel for the NRA. He's handled cases like this all over the country. He said, "Don't get excited." He said, "In all of my cases, I've never seen anyone make it through the appeal process." What the appeal process consists of is you sit in front of the agent that did the audit, the ATF attorney, and an ATF employee. And they all report back to the DIO, the Director of Industry Operations. And so it's not a fair appeal process because the attorney reports back to the DIO. This is like the prosecuting attorney prosecuting you and then turning around and acting as an advisor to the judge. And what was interesting is when you talk about error rates, on one of the facts that they brought forth, one of the documents that they brought forth, they listed my mother as the owner of our competitor who they revoked their license. And so even that we asked them to strike that they listed my mother as the owner of Blue Lake Sporting Goods, our competitor. And then after we filed in, and then what was interesting is then we filed in federal court. It was okay for us to buy and sell guns until then. But after we filed in federal court, the ATF, the DIO, Director of Industry Operations, Richard Van Loan, made the decision that we could no longer acquire new guns. We could sell out our remaining firearms, but we could no longer acquire any more new or used guns. And this Richard Van Loan had said that his reasoning behind this, it was that we were, quote, a threat to public safety. And I even asked as far as law enforcement sales. I had several law enforcement orders to fulfill, and he would not allow me to fulfill our law enforcement orders. And when I contacted our congressional delegates, they were all told, to back off, that they were in federal court. They had waited specifically until we filed in federal court, and then they're off limits. There's absolutely nothing they can do. One of our congressional delegate staff had told me as well, he said this is the response we keep getting from them, that anytime we question them on anything that they're working on, they'll pretty much say, back off, we're in an investigation. Now at this point, they say, back off, we're in federal court. And so basically he had told me that only if things are pretty much peachy keen, then that's the only time that they can question them on anything.
Well, it's interesting they consider you to be a threat to public safety, but it's all right if they murder people at Waco. And they're not considered a threat to public safety. I know we had some discussions about the judge who found out that ATF left out some critical information. Would you like to talk about how sloppy the ATF folks are, or else how dishonest they are?
You know what? An interesting fact on the judge, we had the judge that Judge Edward Lodge. He was the same presiding judge in the Randy Weaver case against the ATF, where they killed his wife and others at Ruby Ridge. What the judge found in asking for our injunction, he found that indeed we are not a threat to public safety. And he also questioned the ATF leaving out critical information, such as other audits, a 2001 and a 2007 audit that we were found in full compliance, 100% in those ones. They also left out missing information as well, as far as things that we had improved on. And also the judge had kind of pretty much slapped their hand on the fact that they were double counting violations as well.
Sounds like standard procedure for people who are dishonest to begin with. This is happening to dealers nationwide. What kind of response are you getting from other dealers, and what kind of insights do you have since you're part of this industry?